I want to talk about the Milgrim experiments in a different light than I usually hear them discussed. And what brought this to mind is somebody on the internet mentioned how something like 81% of the overall population um, got the shot, got the thing in the arm back in 2021 or so. Um, and I don't know how many more got the second ones, and the third ones, and the fourth and fifth and sixth ones, or however many other ones there were. But uh, according to this, to the a master of statistics that I read, 19% of the population uh, is pure blooded, so to say. 81% took got at least one of the shots. And the comparison was made to Milgrim, and Milgrim was a psychologist, and he performed these now famous experiments. Um, in case you didn't know, I'll just briefly describe them. There were the people were taken into a room, and a man wearing a lab coat, an authoritative figure, told him to ask the person on the other side of the booth questions, and if the person on the other side of the booth responded to the question incorrectly, to give him a shock. He was told the shock wouldn't be anything, wouldn't seriously harm the man, but that it was something that was part of the experiment. It was what he needed to do. So the person obeyed, at first, always obeyed at first, and then the stakes were upped when the person behind the booth said, "No, I don't feel like doing this anymore. I have a bad heart. I can feel my heart starting to. I'm getting chest pains. I want to discontinue this." And so they ask another question, and then the guy doesn't answer right, and then the man, the lab coat, says, "Go ahead, shock him, give him a higher dosage." Like, the experiment was, the dosage got higher and higher and higher. In actuality, of course, no one was being harmed. It was the experiment was to see how much these people would, how far they would go in doing probable harm to another person if an authority figure told them to do it, told them they had to do it, told them it was the thing they ought to do. The experiment requires that you continue, that they have no choice, they must continue. Um, that uh, something like around the same number, slightly over 80% of people continued to administer shocks to the person, even after the person on the other side of the booth, who didn't actually exist, but even after the person on the other side of the booth seemingly, objected, or maybe he was there, but he wasn't being shocked. The shocks weren't real, in any case. But they kept on administering what they thought were shocks, even after it was clear that the person was getting harmed and wanted to stop. They continued doing it after they were told to continue doing it. So the comparison was made between the Milgram experiment, and the number of people getting the shot. Now, what I thought, of course, when you hear things like this, of course, if you're a pure blood like myself, and probably like yourself, you feel flattered. You feel like you passed the test. You feel like, you didn't cave in like most other people did, and so forth. And it's okay to feel a certain degree of flattery, to be proud of yourself under certain, under certain circumstances is fine. But I wonder, I began to wonder about certain things regarding the Milgram experiments, and I just wanted to mention a few things. Now, it's possible that Stanley Milgrim was just a good guy. I know I know some people who are college professors who perform psychological experiments uh, aren't actually devious people, aren't actually in league with shadowy figures in intelligence organizations and whatnot. And I don't know anything about whether Stanley Milgram, whether he's trustworthy or not. But I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that he was just someone who cared about wanting to see, who cared about people exercising their people standing up against coercion, and who wanted to see the degree to which they would or wouldn't stand up against coercion when someone who looked authoritative, told them they had to do something that was clearly wrong. But there's another way of looking at it, which is that possibly, and there's no way of knowing. I don't think we can know one way or the other. But the Milgram experiments could also be seen from the point of view of the nefarious people, the deep state types, the coercers. The experiment can be, let's run this test and see how much people will cave to authority. How much will people, what percentage of the population is going to give us problems if we try to do something coercive? Maybe that's certainly another way that the experiments can be looked at. So what I wonder is, actually there were a few things that kind of aroused my curiosity, things that I'd never really thought about before, considering the Milgram experiments. But I'm just gonna rattle them off for y'all now. So firstly, I wonder if the result of the Milgram experiment is meant to have a psychological effect on those who hear about it. And if that effect isn't in some way a part of what they hope to accomplish through it. All right, this is paranoid thinking, but paranoid thinking isn't necessarily wrong. So in other words, if you're told, there's more than over 80% of the population will just knuckle under and do something that they know is wrong, that will harm another person. They'll do harm to fellow human beings, or in the case of the shot, they'll do actual harm to themselves, which is also a difference. I mean, that seems like something to factor in. If he was doing an experiment on people, telling them to give themselves a shock, but saying that the more the bigger of a shock that you'll get, the healthier you'll become, and you have to get the shot. It's part of your responsibility to your fellow man. It's you're going to kill your grandma if you don't shock yourself into oblivion. That would be the equivalent of what this parallel that's being drawn between the Milgram experiments and the shots of 2021. So there's a difference between doing something to somebody else and doing something to yourself, but also if there's something both demoralizing and also, as I said, flattering. When you hear over 80% would just do what they were told, because you think to yourself, well, I wouldn't be one of that 80%. I would I would do what I knew to be right. I wouldn't just follow along with what the authority figure told me. So is there something in that that's meant to sort of put you off your guard, make you feel, because, like I said, it's okay to feel, it's good to feel proud of yourself, after you've actually had some, after you've actually passed some tests or other. But to just flatter yourself into thinking, well, I wouldn't do that. Is that sort of a way of catching you off guard, making you less susceptible, or making you less question yourself less than you should? All right. That's one thing. The other thing is to demoralize, like, oh my gosh, over 80% of a human population is like that. That's awful. Or either that's awful, or they're worthless. What a bunch of worthless trash over 80% of the population is. None of all three of those kinds of responses. A, feeling flattered at being part of the 19% who wouldn't. I think it was 81% who kept administering the shocks, or what they thought were the shocks. So the A responses, or the response, the possible, of all the possible responses, it's one of them is A, feeling flattered at being among the small minority of people who resisted coercion. B, feeling demoralized at how your fellow man are just so weak-minded as to knuckle under to anytime somebody purports to be authoritative. Or C, feeling scornful of your fellow man and looking down on them, and just, I don't know, making certain decisions, maybe like letting it cause you to think that I don't know, that some people out there just don't have souls, that some people out there, like it's sort of similar to the NPC thing. Like there are people out there who just don't have souls, who just don't have an inner monologue. Like whenever I hear a study like that purports such a thing, I am always a little concerned, because what are they telling? They're telling us basically that a segment of humanity isn't really human, and because they're basically just like dumb beasts. So what is that? You can therefore give yourself permission to think a certain way and to do certain things, if that is the case. If 80% of the population are just walking, talking NPCs, but you're one of the people out there, one of the brights, one of the people with brains, who knows what's really going on, then you give yourself permission to behave a certain way, or to think a certain way towards others. And that obviously is violative of the commandment. I mean, I guess I don't want to necessarily make this about faith, because there are people of all faiths and of no faith out there. But I want to underscore just something, a common denominator that I would hope we would have, is just a necessary reverence, or respect for fellow humans. Um, that anything that works to undermine that, or that works to make us, that works to demoralize us, or that works to flatter us unnecessarily or needlessly, um, all of those, all of those are possible ways in which the takeaway from the Milgrim experiments might be a bad thing. Um, you know, and also it's obvious, as I said, obviously it could be just a way of uh, the our ruling class keeping an eye on the rest of us, and seeing seeing how much of us it can uh, just get to go along with whatever schemes they have in mind, and what percentage of the population will actually give them trouble, which would help them to prepare, to make contingency plans for those rebellious 19% or however many there are out there. The only thing that would militate against that is that Milgrim is, his experiment became well known. It's something that everybody could research. It's something that any old person can find out about. And it would seem like if these were deep state experiments conducted by deep state people with deep state connections, and who strictly served the ruling class, then this kind of study wouldn't get out to the public at all. So that's what makes me wonder, just because I think it's always good to have a healthy suspicion and a certain degree of paranoia. A touch of paranoia isn't a bad thing, wondering why are they telling us this? Even if it's true, if these experiments are true, why are they telling us this? How does it help us? Is it really helpful to know the percentage of humanity who, when put in this stressful situation, still administered harm to, or thought they were administering harm to giving pain to another human being? Like if it was a lower percentage, if it was just 41% of people instead of 81% of people, I see how it's interesting just to know. But on the other hand, how does it help? Does it really change should it really change anything about how you behave around people? Should it really change anything about your behavior or your morality, or I think that maybe a part of the just the mess, the calling it a mess isn't strong enough. That's not a strong enough word. The catastrophe, the awfulness that was 2020. I can't help but wonder if part of that is, part of that was to demoralize and to, to make those of us who resisted feel superior and scornful of others. It's Holy Week right now, and during Holy Week we read the account in which Judas, of course, betrays Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. But the more relatable type of betrayal is Peter's betrayal of Jesus. Judas caves in, sells out Jesus for money. Afterwards, feels bad about it and hangs himself, of course. But Peter's betrayal is more subtle, but much more relatable. What Peter does is after the crucifixion, or no, I'm sorry, after not after the crucifixion, after Jesus' arrest, after Judas betrays Jesus and Jesus is arrested and scourged and taken in for questioning, which eventually leads to his crucifixion. Peter is questioned. People see him and say, I saw you with Jesus. You were his disciple. You were his friend. And he denies it. He says, "No, I don't know him. I didn't. You're confusing me with somebody else. I never knew him. Jesus was not. I was not a disciple of Jesus." And this is the same Peter who said, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life." He talked a good game. He was very he was very hearty in his declarations of being on Jesus' side. But when the chips were down, he did something very human, which he chickened out. He became a coward because he didn't want to get arrested and scourged and crucified alongside Jesus. Now, the point of us hearing about that, the point of us hearing about Peter, and even about hearing about Judas, isn't. I don't think the point is to make us look down on them. I always felt sympathy for Judas, and I got the feeling I wasn't really supposed to, and maybe I'm not supposed to, because he not only took the money but then killed himself. But it seems like taking the money and then hating yourself for what you did and killing yourself, that seems more that's more relatable than taking the money and justifying to yourself why you did what you did, and then just living a good life with your newfound money, with your newfound riches. That Judas did not do that. And Peter also, in spite of this moment of weakness, he became one of the greatest of all the disciples, and ultimately did give his life for Jesus many years later. So I don't think the point is that we're supposed to look down on people like that. And I don't think I don't think we should watch the Milgrim experiment and look down on the people who did those things, who administered those shocks. I don't think it's hard to think about 2020 and 2021 because so many of us were mistreated. Whether we were fired, whether we were shunned, whether we were, just self-righteously upbraided, because we didn't want to wear one of those stupid masks or get the stupid shot. I don't think the point of 2020 and 2021 should be we are better than other people because we didn't knuckle under while they did. I think we should give thanks that we were able to preserve our integrity and ask for the grace to be able to continue with integrity throughout the rest of our lives, even when the chips are down, even when it's, the social um, the push from social forces is so um, unbelievably strong as it was in 2020 and 2021. You were really treated uh, like a miscreant, like a criminal, if you didn't do what they said. I remember, you know, and that's hard to forgive. And I think there are people who have, even though I had my own struggles, there are people who had much worse struggles than me. People who resisted much more than I did. There were still ways in which I wore the stupid face covering in certain situations, but I just, would take it off when they weren't looking or whatever. I just didn't take it very seriously, or I'd pull it down below my nose or whatever. But there were people who just refused to wear it, and just that was just they just drew a line there, and that was where they never faltered. And if people threatened to kick them out of a store or something, they said, go ahead, get the manager, whatever. Go ahead, call the police, whatever. I'm gonna do it. And for most people, they did call their bluff because most people didn't really want to take it that far. Even the ones who were being coerced, even the ones who were a party to the coercion, didn't really want to take it that far. But some of them did, and anyway, I think we should forgive those those who stumble, and we should understand that there, but for the grace of God go I. Maybe that's the where I should leave this. I've already gone on for longer than I thought I would. There, but for the grace of God go I. And given the right circumstances, given the, I think we should humble ourselves and acknowledge that we need help, we need strength to continue with integrity and to continue to do, to resist coercion, and that, for all we know, we might become like Peter, or even like Judas, if under the right set of circumstances, if they really knew what the weaknesses just to play up, if they really knew how to play you like a violin. And let's face it, I'm thinking more and more that that's part of what they're trying to do. They're fine tuning it. They're honing their craft, and they're making it more individualized. And they have more access to exactly who you are and what what's on your phone. What's the history of the things that you've watched. There's plenty that can be concluded, and plenty of ways to play on your weaknesses, and we should pray to just keep this, to be, to always have the strength to resist, and to not fall into either demoralization, either the demoralization of thinking, oh well, it's hopeless, they're too powerful, we're too weak, it's over, black pill, or on the other hand, thinking we're above it all, that we're better than most of humanity, are just NPCs, and we're better than that, and we don't belong in the same category with them. Which is sort of inherent in the whole calling yourself a pureblood, thinking of yourself as a pureblood, right? I'm not totally against the use of that word, but I do think if it invites you to think that you are of a higher species somehow, then, I mean, we're all created in the image and likeness of God, right? Whether you're religious or not, that's an essential starting point, I think, in thinking about these kinds of things. So I'll leave it off there.